Alright, so music. You know it, probably, and you likely have an opinion or two on the subject. What kind of music is good, what appropriate subject matter in music is, or how music can make you feel. One generally inarguable fact about music, however, is that it's an art form, and moreover, one that can be used to complement and heighten other forms of art. For example, the video game. Video games are a unique art form as they are able to tell the same stories as movies or literature, but immerse the player into the events of that story more effectively than the others. In video games, you control what happens. Sure, the events may be predetermined, but you are the one controlling the actual steps up to said event. So how does music play into all this? Well, simply controlling the character isn't enough to give the player a massive sense of immersion most of the time. There could be a number of things that take a player out of the game world, such as bad controls or graphics. I think to truly appreciate and understand the weight of something, we must first see what it's like without it. To give an example of this, here's footage from The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. Just by looking at this footage, we don't really know much about this area of the game. Is it a winter wonderland? What tone does this place overall have, and what emotion does that instill in us? We have no idea, and we just have to fill in the gaps with whatever we want. Now let's put the proper music in this scene and see what that adds. Now this area that could have been perceived as somewhat nice and wintry without the music is actually very unpleasant. It's less Christmas morning snow and more so January or February blizzards. But why is this? How can music infer so much in a scene where we're already given so much information? Let's look at a couple examples and try to find out why. First off, we need to cover some basics. Repeated patterns, major, minor, and the speed of music. Repeated patterns are often used in music to give a sense of theming and comfort. If something is repeating, we can usually find comfort and rely on that repeating pattern, which can increase how much the piece is overall enjoyed. Major and minor notes are pretty simple. Typically, major notes are grander and more whole-sounding, giving a warmer, more friendly feeling, while minor notes are the opposite. The speed of a piece can create energy. If a piece is fast-paced, it can mean that there is a high-stakes situation going on, or create a sense of urgency, while a slow piece can be relaxing and calm, but of course there are exceptions. These three elements will pop up a lot in our investigation. First off, let's look at one of the most iconic video game franchises out there, Super Mario. 2D Mario games are typically fun, easy, lighthearted, and enjoyable adventures that simply exist just to create a good time for the player. So what helps the music match and enhance the feel of fun? First off, listen to this opening part of the main theme for Mario. This right here is a prime example of how Mario music uses openings and memorable beginnings to grab attention, much like a movie or book would with its opening lines or scenes. The rhythms in these pieces aren't simple either. They're lively and bouncy, letting the melody stay simple at points while not compromising how interesting the overall piece is. To aid with this, they also use syncopated beats, which jazz musicians often use to give their music bounce and increase its diversity. In fact, this music can sound quite boring and dull if it's stuck to a plain, simple rhythm. Okay, but maybe a fun and energetic world is easy to create, so what about something somber or threatening? Remember the example I showed you before, when it didn't have the music and then I added it in? No? Alright, cool, glad to see we're all paying attention here. Anyway, let's take a look at an example from the same game. In Majora's Mask, the moon is about to crash into the world, and you have 3 days to stop it. What I want to draw attention to is the music of the main area you start your adventure in, Clocktown. The main theme of this place changes every day, so let's analyze each day and pick them all apart. In Majora's Mask, each day starts off with this melody. This is the one non-changing recurring part about Clocktown's melodies. This could potentially play into those repeated patterns we were talking about earlier, except this pattern is extremely spaced out. In this first piece, we are introduced to Clocktown's main melody. It's played as an easygoing tempo, letting us become accustomed to it. It's also repeating, like many video game tunes, and at this pace it feels good. It also has a somewhat bouncy rhythm, but it's not super energetic. This song could easily fit in a somewhat lively Renaissance marketplace. There are subtle bits of percussion, but nothing too crazy. This piece uses a good variety of instruments with none sounding overly too low or too high. Pretty enjoyable overall, but what happens when there's only 48 hours left before the end of the world? Day 2 is much faster than Day 1. You can tell that out of the gate, and this potentially plays into the sense of urgency that the world is ending. But if so, then that's the only part of this piece that symbolizes Clocktown's demise, as the rest of this piece seems to almost be in denial that anything could be wrong. This version of the song uses staccato notes and speeds up the tempo while also using higher notes. This gives it way more energy than the first piece, like you're trying to keep yourself preoccupied and busy, like you're trying not to think about the fact that your world is ending. This day, once again, uses higher sounding instruments, which are typically less frightening or intimidating than larger, lower sounding ones. This is because our brains relate high noises to small things, therefore less threat, and low noises to larger things, indicating a bigger threat. It's like a survival instinct trait. Fun fact. This piece is nice at first, but feels annoyingly cheerful after a while, so how does the third day handle the world's end? This piece is sped up far faster than the rest of them. The sense of energy is replaced with a sense of urgency. There are apparent dark undertones in this song, and it's very sinister. The world is ending and everyone's accepted it. You're about to meet with a terrible fate. What do? It plays the motif of Clocktown in its repeating melody, but the melody has gone from calm and reassuring to almost insane sounding. It helps infuse the piece with a dangerous, deranged feeling. It's very unsettling. After listening to it in the background of writing this at 12:30 in the morning, I actually found myself very uncomfortable and opted to switch it for some calmer, relaxing music. What's interesting is that I tried playing the Day 1 melody of Clocktown to calm myself, but it made me just as uneasy. I didn't even plan this out, this just happened while I was writing the script, but it helps encourage my point that video game music instills feelings in the players that drag them deeper into the world they're in. Alright, now that we're done with this, here, have this nice relaxing music. I think we've deserved it. Oops, sorry, I forgot. There's actually one more piece of Clocktown music we have to cover, and it's titled The Final Hours. Midnight of the final day, this haunting song will play, with 6 hours left before the end of the world. In the game, you can go around and talk to all the characters. Seeing cartoon characters try to come to terms with their inevitable demise, it's incredibly off-putting and somber. This piece is a complete formula break so far, completely ditching Clocktown's main melody in place for a synth piece, with very hollow-sounding noises in the background and a small mischievous recurring melody. It's like the dark undertones from Day 3 have finally overtaken everything and are all that's left. Since the town is called Clocktown, there's a giant clock tower in the center of it, which rings its bells during this time. This is even more unsettling, as bells throughout history were used as warnings of oncoming dangers and disasters. This aids this eerie piece in becoming even more haunting. The final game we're going to investigate today is titled Animal Crossing New Leaf. In this game, you're the mayor of a town. You create town projects, interact with your anthropomorphic animal villagers, and make money by fishing and catching bugs and then selling them. It's a life simulation game and it's very relaxing, I must say. The game has an in-game timer and actually operates on the same system we use in the real world. 1 hour in Animal Crossing is 1 hour in reality. Each hour also has its own musical theme, so I figured we could analyze some of the main ones and see how they could immerse the player into the game. Let's start off with 7 a.m. This song is light and upbeat, giving the feeling of a new day that has many possibilities. It doesn't start with a bass line, but has one eventually added in, like how you start your morning slowly and groggily and eventually get into the groove of the day. This one's more laid back for the beginning of the afternoon. You've accomplished some work, but there's still some to do. The minor notes in the melody help display this, like you're not completely out of the woods yet from a day's work. This one's light and happy, sort of like a shopping mall, while still relaxing. The day's work has been completed, and now you can mellow out and have chill time before the night. The one area where it mellows out helps contribute to the slowdown after a busy day, but the melody kicks back up to remind you that the day isn't over yet, and you can still accomplish personal goals. It also has a repeating bass line, which again creates that sense of safety and ease. Ooh, I'm excited for this next one. This song is my favorite in the entire game, for 7 p.m. It's much more slowed down than the previous songs to symbolize the day ending. At one point in the song, notes barely get played because they're going so slow. This slowdown helps relax the player and remind them that the end of the day is drawing near, while the distant tropical instruments, steel drums, in the background invoke a tropical feeling, which could remind the player of sunlight and the fact that there's still a little bit of daylight left. It's now the end of the day, very slow-moving melody once again. There are small little percussion bits to symbolize the few couple people that are still awake and about, but they're played with clappers or on a rim to show that even though there are people around, it's not lively. There's a piano break and most of the instruments cut out, symbolizing the drift off to sleep as the world slowly fades away, restarting for your next day. So there you have it. Using repeating melodies, understanding what minor and major notes do in a piece, and creating memorable melodies with them, our investigation has come to an end. Video game music is more than just the beeps and boops some people think it is. I'm sure anybody who's played any of these games and heard any of these songs had certain emotions or feelings evoked inside of them when hearing certain pieces in this video. And that's the great thing about music in general, the lasting impact and emotion it can instill within anyone. Music itself doesn't need to complement another art form. In fact, it could be argued that the other art forms are used to complement music. Music paints the picture in the listener's mind. Music sets the tone and setting. The visuals of other mediums just help refine what music lays out. Or maybe that's just what I think.